Good afternoon. Welcome to the Career Spotlight Zoom conversations, dedicated to speaking to industry professionals who share their working experiences and provide an insight into their day to day task. I'm your host, Darian Collymore, and today I'm joined by Dr. Stefan Walcott. He's a Barbadian pianist, composer, and academic who holds a PhD in cultural studies from the University of the West Indies. He's also been privileged to perform with and write for a wide cross section of artists both in England and here in Barbados. He's currently the artistic director of the 1688 Collective and the 1688 Dingole, a not-for-profit. Dr. Walker also teaches part-time at the University of the West Indies and the Barbados Community College. Thank you for joining us today, Dr. Walker.
You're welcome, Darian.
So tell me, what exactly does your job entail as an artistic director?
Well, in terms of my work with 1688, artistic directorship included planning what the group is going to do in terms of materials, shows, content, what sort of content is going to be produced. So basically, the day-to-day running of that group, that's what that particular job entailed. But in a wider area, I'm involved in music, and being involved in music means, especially in a tiny country like Barbados, you have to do a multitude of things. So I also teach, as it was mentioned in the bio. Right. So that's part of it, as well as performing. So the artistic directorship, that is in with 1688, that's planning out what they have to do, what materials to rehearse, what sort of content we're looking to create, whether it is working with smaller artists, bigger artists, shows, as well as the nature of the performances, who's going to be performing with us in terms of the ensemble cast, all that type of stuff is involved in that. But in terms of the musician, the other aspects, performing as well as the education aspect, all of that forms the career that I'm currently involved with.
Okay. So music, right? Music is your career and everything you do. So would you say that you chose music or did music choose you in terms of deciding to pursue music?
Well, in terms of music, I really did not see it as a career right up until I was about 15, 16. At that time, I got involved in a band at school. From then, I knew I had to do something in music. So originally, I was looking at music therapy as one of the options, but I went to study at Barbados Community College, and then I recognized that maybe, performance education can be the way to go as well too. I always had an interest in research, like finding out the reason why we do certain things. So I knew that academia or seeking to research and being involved in musical research had to be somewhere in there as well too. So it's just all these things that I became exposed to in Barbados Community College. And then further on, when I went on to study and do my undergrad, then I knew for sure how to be involved in one of these, if not all of these aspects. As it turned out, it ended up being all of those aspects I was involved with. But yeah, so it's from 15, then going on to Barbados Community College, and then on to undergrad where I decided to make that step.
Okay, so what then at 15 did you decide to study? Like when you decided that music was the career path that you wanted to go on, what did you decide to study there? And did this also influence what you decided to study at undergraduate level?
Of course, at 15, as I said, when I was in the band, I knew there had to be something I wanted to do in music. But fortunately for me, or unfortunately, as my mother says, the I was on a music track within my secondary school. I was actually doing grade 4, grade 5 music within school. So that allowed me, therefore, to make the step fairly easily into a more formal study at Barbados Community College. And I was involved in the first group that ever entered at the Barbados Community College. So I did lower 6 and then upper 6. And then after my first year after upper 6 is when the program started at the Barbados Community College. So basically in sixth form was biding time until the program started. I do not advise other people to buy time. I'm just saying that's what it worked out for me, that I had to wait until that program started. But fortunately, I was in the music stream coming through secondary school.
Okay, so then for persons who may be in secondary school who want to pursue your career, would you say there are any subjects that they could possibly take, or maybe is something rather degree like at undergraduate level that would be more suited?
Right. So in terms of music is a very specialized field of study. So you need to take music basically. If you want to fall into the music stream, you have to do music.
Right.
Preferably the earlier you start, the better it will be for you because it's such a wide field of study. I mean, performance alone, some people spend their time studying just that, but then we start moving on into other ideas that come out of performance, like harmonic concepts, and then you go on into other research ideas. There's also music therapy, as I mentioned before. There's music sociology, so the whole music forms and works and within cultures as well too. Musical behavior. There's a whole set of areas within music. But the
Right.
key is you need to start music itself. If you want to be any sort of professional musician, you have to do the fundamentals of music, the fundamentals of performance, theoretical fundamentals. They need to be covered, they need to be studied if you want to take a more formalized approach into becoming a musician. If you want to not go into the formal set of education, you still need to have that performance and theoretical grounding. So at some point in time, you have to sit down with your instrument, whether it be voice or be an instrument, and spend some time taking lessons and understanding and listening to the oral history that comes out of your instrument. So if you're playing violin classical, you have to listen to a lot of that, but you have to do music if you want to do music, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it definitely does. I know even, for example, when I went to school in secondary school, in first form, it was mandatory to take music up to third form. And I know many friends of mine who actually enjoy playing music, like doing the piano or playing violin. Many of them took up after school lessons with our music teacher, and she carried a lot of people to do the exams at the Royal School of Music. You know, when they send down the papers like for people. So I think music is being integrated into a lot of the curriculum. So it's good that people are exposed to it. You know, some might find a love for it. So it's good that people have the option there to maybe find a career like you did in something that they love doing.
Yeah. Even though I say you need a theoretical grounding, and I hear you on your point, I still have some issues with how music is taught within
Yeah.
the formal system. I think they spend too much time now on the theoretical grounding. I
Mm.
leave a lot of performance and a lot of what makes music fun. I've come across more than one person because I teach part time at university. So I come across people who have a real love for music, but they never caught on to the formalized learning within secondary school. And they always say, "Oh, I'm horrible at music. I did horribly at music." I said, "You did horribly at music theory." That's like
Right.
saying, "I hate English because I failed grammar," or "I can't do English because I failed grammar." You speak English every day. You communicate using the language every day. So there has to
Right.
be some sort of affinity and ability you have in speaking the language. So that's what happens in music. You enjoy listening to music. People really get immersed in it, but they get turned off a lot with how it's taught within the secondary school system. I mean, it is important, as I said before, to have that grounding if you want to become a professional musician, but you must have that love still. That's the thing that needs to drive it. You must have that love. And it's a shame that more students in the system are not allowed to maintain and obtain and practice that love of music in a formalized setting, right?
Indeed.
Even though theory is important, I still think that we can get even more people involved and get in touch with their artistic and creative selves if there was a slightly focus within how music is taught in secondary
Indeed.
schools.
Hopefully one day maybe you could spearhead that effort in terms of bringing a reform music program to secondary schools.
Well, you never know. These days in COVID, I've been enjoying the time off, to be honest with you, because it's like one thing for me. Because I mentioned all those things I do at the top of the interview, and was just going from one thing to another thing. But
Right.
COVID has given me some time to really step back. Now I know we're going to get to this later, but give me some
Mm.
time to step back and reevaluate what I like doing, what I
Right.
have to do, and what is the main purpose of what I am doing in life and in general. And I think as a career people, even in the arts, we need to have that time to step back and really self-evaluate. It's very important within whatever you do as a career.
Definitely. You always need to focus and set a goal for yourself. And in
Yeah.
any journey, you need to understand where you're going even before you can think about starting. So, even as you mentioned with the whole COVID period, you know, like uh, obviously the world came to a standstill. A lot of jobs have been interrupted. I know, obviously, for someone like you, a creative, you even mentioned you had time off. So, for those who might be now coming into your profession, or even someone like you who's actually in the profession, moving into this post-COVID period, how do you see your role changing, or how do you see the job evolving, so to speak?
Well, I know for one that the COVID period has really caused a lot of creators to self-evaluate, as I said before, not only their creative output, but also their business output, their actual internal structure of what they were doing, because it placed so much pressure on everything, financial pressure, mental, psychological pressure on artists, right? So going forward, a lot of artists will now be forced to really examine what their worth is in terms of what they can charge economically, how much they're worth economically, as well as looking as especially as for us as musicians and as looking at passive income. In other words, income that does not rely on you performing on stage. So I know, for example, there's been a huge push by the National Culture Foundation to get content, and that's going to be the name of the game, because content does not go bad, it doesn't spoil. Once it's out there and it has consumers, you generate value, right? You
Right.
create real economic value. So I think there's going to be a push now for some more tangible, substantial way of producing of generating income for creative people.
Right.
So I know, for example, royalties from having placements in movies is very important, because Netflix experienced a real boom in COVID because so much people were consuming that content. So if we have now your songs in being placed within these spaces, then obviously that generates income. Even if let's wind it back, even on a lesser scale now, if you have just a short ad creation for CBC, or even a program created for CBC, some animated program, for example, animation does not need people to be there physically in their spaces. So you're really looking at resistant, COVID resistant, or COVID resistant creative content that does not
Right.
rely on people itself in order for you to make money. And that's what I think a lot of artists now are forced to look at doing, along with the performing aspect. Because what happened in music is that as piracy increased, we relied a lot on like performances to subsidize our income. So we say, oh well, they're going to pirate anyway. I just need the live shows to sustain me.
Right.
But unfortunately, when the live shows disappeared, now it left many without any sort of income streams coming in, except those who had the content that's being streamed. The content is being streamed in addition to being synced with film, and people that are earning royalties from people buying their records years ago and liking them, or buying, publishing, buying their music, physical musical scores. Those are the people that did not have a huge issue with the whole COVID, because they're still getting those passive income streams coming in.
Yeah, definitely. We really hope that, like you mentioned, creators are able to adapt to the new situation, because obviously many people, even businesses, large corporations, have fallen victim to the loss of business. So you really hope that people will be able to find a new way to market themselves and brand themselves, and get that much needed business and get their content out there.
It's true. It's not going to be easy though. It's a very difficult process. Fortunately, I had a head start in that I was able over the years to add a couple more skills in order for me to be more self-sufficient. So in terms of production skills, even though it's not as good as other people, it's still enough for me to produce songs that are in my head, to produce educational material, because that's what I was involved with within the COVID period. So in other words, producing multiplication times table for the National Culture Foundation, producing an alphabet song, and those types of stuff you could put online. They did a folk song series, for example, which was able to produce myself to keep the cost down, but still be able to put out the content. And content is just going to be the only way we're going to be able to survive as creators. We actually produce, produce, and produce.
Indeed. So along your journey, obviously academics is one side, but would you say there are any skills that a musician, obviously in arts talking about COVID, something like resilience or being able to adapt could be considered a skill. So would you say there are any other skills that you would recommend people try to adopt, or try to foster within themselves?
As you just mentioned, the ability to do more than one thing is so crucial in
Right.
the modern environment, especially in the modern creative environment. A tiny country as such as Barbados is so expensive. So if you are, for example, if you're producing a song, right, and you cannot produce, you have to go to producer, so that's money there. You need a video, that's money there. You need to budget it, that's money there to get an accountant. However, if you're capable of doing more than one of those things yourself, you all of a sudden you reduce costs, you make your product more viable instantly. It's just a dollars and cents thing. So my advice is to do multiple things. Learn Excel if you can, learn a video editing software program if you can, learn production if you can. Learn how to produce your own as much as your stuff as you can by yourself in order for you to survive. It's going to literally come down to that survival of the fittest in the creative industries. Because if you're only able to perform well, then you're going to be shunted and you're going to be unable to produce the content unless you spend a lot of money. So it's going to come down to that really and truly. So my advice is to get as many skills as you can under your fingertips, even if it's academic skills, writing books, going on conferences, because that enables you to get, hopefully, in the future, as you build your reputation, some consultancy work. So all of these things will come right into your economic streams if you want to be an artist post 2020 COVID.
Okay. It's very good advice. So lastly, do you see yourself continuing in this profession? I know you mentioned doing things, for example, branching out into teaching and producing educational content. Do you see yourself continuing in a particular direction, or do you see maybe a career change or a change in your future?
That's a very good question, actually. One I was considering in COVID, to be honest with you, because it says it's a period of self-reflection.
Yeah.
I feel if I jump ship from music, that a lot of people will be upset. Not necessarily my immediate family, but in terms of people who I've worked with and I've encouraged to keep in music. So I will be involved in music because it's wide, but there are other areas that I will keep participating within. Content creation is one, so I'm still going to be there producing content of some sort. I'm currently working on a folk book, a Caribbean folk book now as we speak. I started that in COVID, so I'm definitely going to be doing that. Teaching is still going to be a part of it. As I said before, the more things you can do, the more revenue streams you have, the more comfortable you could be. And eventually, I want to help other creatives grow their product. People talk about branding, and people look towards other businesses for inspiration and advice, which is good. But in taking an idea from in its inception and creating it to export, people need advice on what exactly how it works in these tiny spaces. So the Handles Caribbean Messiah project that I wrote, that was an idea, and it was up to export level. We're supposed to go to Halle, Germany, taking a cast of Caribbean people to Germany to perform next year. So that was from idea to export. That whole arc, I would eventually like to help others in terms of how they can get into that. And that's 1688, the business side of it, which also has another couple productions under its wing to show people how that's done, how you take something from there to here and get the necessary capitalization, revenue streams, staffing, all of this search for funding. That's something that I would like to be involved with in the future as well too.
And that's commendable, especially in an industry like yours where not many people are able to survive on their own. It's good when people like yourself who have been successful are able to impart knowledge and able to teach others the way or how to do things. Because obviously it's tough waters to navigate, and it all is you've had years of experience. So for some people coming up, they might not understand how exactly to make it. So I definitely commend you for taking the time and the effort to try to educate others as well as you continue on your journey.
All right, thanks a lot, Darren. I will be doing that in the future for sure.
Thank you
So
so much
thanks
for
again
joining us.
for the interview, and I hope that I have not discouraged, but perhaps provide that level of realism that's necessary for students to make the decision in whatever field they choose to go in, but especially the arts in a tiny space such as Barbados.
Definitely. Thank you so much for joining us today, Dr. Walcott. Thank you for taking the time out to speak with me. Like you said, we hope that it didn't discourage, but only brought us about some realism, but also to encourage people. You're a gleaming example of what you can be once you pursue the career and put your mind to it. So thank you so much for coming to speak with us today, and I hope you have a wonderful day.
Thank you, man. You too.
Thank you. Alrighty. Today's Career Spotlight was brought to us by the Student Center, your official guide to higher education. Their services are available for anyone who might be interested in pursuing music, as Dr. Walcott has, and they can help with any college or university placement. For more information, you can visit www.thestudentcenter.net, and you can also check out Dr. Walcott's website. You can provide it. Go ahead.
Yeah, www.stefanwalcott.com. That's STEFAN Walcott, WALCOTT.com. And it's a blog really on Caribbean music and other things. So you'll find educational resources on it as well too.
Alrighty. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Alrighty. Have a good day.
You too.